The video on homemade yogurt. So I make my own yogurt. It's pretty straightforward. Once you've got your yogurt culture, all you have to do is boil some milk, um, let it drop back down to a temperature of about 45 degrees, and then add your yogurt culture and then keep it warm for about 12 hours, and it naturally makes yogurt. It's pretty straightforward. I started my yogurt culture with some kefir ages ago, maybe 2 years ago now. And what I do is I take, well, there's two ways you can do it. When you're getting ready to make some more yogurt, what you do is you take some of your yogurt that you've made, and then you add that to a fresh batch of milk, and that continues the yogurt process, yogurt making process. But what I do is, because I like my yogurt a little bit thicker, I strain the yogurt through a cloth, and then some whey comes out of the yogurt, and then I keep that whey and I use that as the culture to start my next batch of yogurt. So I don't actually, I get to eat all the yogurt I make, and instead of throwing the whey away, throwing the whey away, I use that whey, which I normally would have thrown away. You can also ferment it as well. I turned it into a fermented like mead. It was very nice. But anyway, I'm distracted. So, I've had it for about 2 years, and I think the culture has changed. So, normally in yogurt cultures, there's a few different types of yeast, and is it yeast or is it bacteria? Whatever creates the yogurt, there's normally a few different types of things in it that makes yogurt, and I think mine has changed over time, and I think some of the parts of the yogurt culture have died, and other parts have kind of come to the forefront as like the dominant type of culture. And I think it tastes almost creamy sometimes, like almost like whipped cream. So I'm curious. So what I thought I'd do is I'd make another batch. I'll make two batches of yogurt. I'll make a normal batch of yogurt using my the whey from the last batch of yogurt, which I freeze, and then I'd buy some new kefir, and then we'd make a batch of yogurt out of that, and then we'll do a taste difference to see if anything kind of changes. Because I think well, I first remember the yogurt taste like it was kind of quite sharp, nice, but sharp, whereas now it's very creamy. So I'm going to do it in a flask, and then you're just going to keep it warm. It's fine if you're only making a small amount. So a little bit of kefir in there. I'll drink the rest of that. Maybe a bit more. That more in there. I'm not going to mix them once I've made them. And then I need to take some of this warm milk without spilling it and pour it onto the, and then keep it warm. So that in there, like that can go back into there. Everything's nice and clean and sterilised, so we don't have to worry about that. And then we've got a top, so that can go on there, that one there, lid on there, wrap it in a cloth, put it on top of a radiator because it's got cold again, so the heating's on. Well, this needs to go into here, and what I normally do is put it in a pan of warm water and then wrap it all up. So this pan sits in another pan of water, so like a bain-marie type of thing, and then put a lid on it as well. And so this pan goes into another pan of warm water, which is like an insulating jacket, and then I put towels all around it as well, so it keeps it nice and warm for about 12 hours, but sometimes it can be on for a lot longer. But there we go. So we'll see how it turns out in the morning. Let's have a look. So you can see that that's set. Oh, that was good. So it's definitely worked. So you can make, in fact I've done it before in a flask. So you can make yogurt in a flask. So we'll taste it and then I'm going to strain it. So we need 2 spoons. So I don't want to transfer the culture from one to the other. So this is my normal one. It's alright. It's alright. Needs straining. That's more acidic. Is that one? Did this one? No, it's okay. I used different spoons. That was more acidic. This one's more acidic. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, that one's smoother. So it has changed. So I'll do what I normally do, which is strain it through a cloth and then get rid of excess amounts of whey, and then add a little bit more whey back into that. So yeah, we'll strain it. So it's just a simple case of pouring it through a cheesecloth, and the yogurt solids stay in the cloth, and the whey passes through the cloth. The cloth's clean, it's just a bit stained because I use it for all kinds of experiments. So we'll let those drain, and I see the whey's come out of it already, and it'll thicken up, and then we'll mix it up, and then we'll kind of have another retaste once we've turned it into the thick consistency of yogurt that I like. I have strained it to thicken it up, so you kind of see the difference. It's a lot, bring that closer, it's a lot thicker, and that's just putting it through a cloth and straining out some of the whey. And then I generally strain it a little bit too far, and then have to add some of the whey back in, and then it's just a case of putting it through the mixer just to kind of make it smooth again. So that's my regular culture for the yeast. It's not yeast. For the yogurt, that is the new one. So let's give it a taste. They're both about the right consistency. I will end up putting that one into that one, but I'm going to save the whey from that one to make the next batch, I think. Unless I prefer the taste of that one, we'll have to see. So it's lovely and creamy. You'd think there was some cream in there, but there's not. So, and how's this one? It's got a different texture. That's interesting. That's got a different texture. It kind of sticks to the roof of your mouth in a way that this one doesn't. It's the consistency. No, they both look about the same. They both look about the same. So, it's just a little bit more sour, is that one? So, what do I think? I think two things. Either two things have happened, one or the other. I think every time I save the whey, which I put in the little pot, every time I save the whey and put some in this pot, I stick it in the freezer to use next time, because I don't think, now when I'm saving the whey, I freeze it rather than keep it in the fridge for a week and a half, 2 weeks until I make the next batch of yogurt. I freeze it because I don't think the bacteria in the whey would survive a week and a half, 2 weeks, because I don't think there'd be enough nutrients in the just in the whey for the bacteria that makes the yogurt to survive. So I freeze it to kind of slow down its replicating process. So I think what's happened, so there's two things that's happened. I think that the freezing and defrosting process has potentially killed a few strains of the bacteria that is normally in that. So, and what's happened is it's the bacteria that's died through potentially the freezing process is the bacteria that adds like that texture and the sourness to it. I think those bacteria have died, or they aren't as prevalent. So they're still there potentially, but they're just not as strong, and it tends to be the other bacteria that replicate quicker and faster. Hence why this one tastes creamier than that one. And it's not sour, but it's got a sour edge to it. So I think potentially through the freezing and defrosting process, I've weakened certain amounts of the bacteria or killed them off, potentially. So there's less bacteria in this one, less different types of bacteria in this one than that one. Or potentially just over the course of time, certain bacteria have taken over. They've become stronger. They are stronger types of bacteria, and they've taken over and become the dominant bacteria through just the age of the process. Because I've had it for about 18 months, 2 years. This particular culture of yogurt. So I think either it's changed because of time, or it's changed because of the freezing process, or maybe it's both. But it's interesting. There will certainly be a lot more probiotics in that one than there is in that one, because that's got a different flavour to it. But interesting. And I suppose that's where there'll be different cultures that manufacturers use for making yogurt. There won't just be one type of culture that makes all yogurts. There'll be lots of different types of cultures that make lots of different types of yogurts. And I suppose finding a particular culture that works for you and to be a yogurt manufacturer is probably kind of how it works. And there'll be different cultures in different so there'll be different cultures in different countries, and there'll be different cultures in different climates. So like a culture that works particularly well in northern European countries, like the Scandinavian countries, won't be the same culture that you get in the southern Mediterranean countries. But all those cultures have yogurt, but it'd be different strains and different cultures of yogurt. So I don't know. I kind of got an idea of what's coming on, but I'd have to speak to a yogurt expert. But it's interesting all the same, and I'm waffling, as always. But I just thought it was interesting. Just interesting all the time. But the same with when I make a sourdough culture. I'll get the sourdough culture out and we'll talk about it, which I might as well. So, you make a sourdough culture. It takes about a week and a half sometimes, depending on the time of year, to kind of get enough yeast together. Feed it every day. And when you first start using a fresh culture that you've just made, your bread isn't as uniform. So you tend to get larger air pockets. It can rise slower, or it can rise a lot faster than we kind of quite used to. But then slowly over time, what happens is the culture kind of like calms down. So I assume that the more dominant types of yeasts kind of take over. That they're best suited to the environment that you're keeping your culture in. So if it's cooler, the cultures that prefer a cooler environment will take over, rather than the cultures that prefer a warmer climate. So there we go. That's kind of like my thoughts. But it's interesting that it's changed over time. It's kind of developed. So, but I suppose when you're manufacturing yogurt on a large scale, you always use the same culture. You don't make one batch, save a bit of that yogurt, and then put it into the next batch, which is what I do. You use the same culture, like a fresh culture every time. It's the same culture, but it's a fresh one every time, so it hasn't got time to change, because you want a consistent product. So if I was making this on a large scale, and I was taking some of the yogurt and making the next batch, the people who first started eating my yogurt and thought it was very nice, slowly over time it would change, and people would kind of go, oh, it's not as nice as it used to be. Something's changed, and that's because the culture would have had 18 months, 2 years, and it will have changed. And I'm presuming that maybe we'll do this in another 2 years' time, if I manage to keep it alive. My sourdough culture died 6 months ago, and I was devastated. And this is the second time that I've started up with a. Well, we'll be able to tell. Is there a date on it? No, there's no date. The date's not there anymore, so we can't tell when I started this. But it was about 2 years ago, 18 months, 2 years ago. So it changes over time. So you don't get a consistency in product if you do it at home, but you do on a manufacturing level because you're using a fresh culture every time rather than a culture that you developed over time. So, but anyway, it's changed over time, and there we go. It has. I was right in what I thought. I'm not 100% sure why it's happened, but I know it has happened. But I can't pinpoint the reason exactly. But I have an idea. But there we go. So yeah, interesting to me, and interesting if you've ever made your own yogurt. I don't think many people do. You should do. It's very good for you, and it's delicious, and it's certainly a lot cheaper than buying it. So, and once you start, it's pretty straightforward. It's not that much work, and you basically get loads of yogurt for the price of milk. But anyway, there we go. Success.